New for 2024, something we've all been waiting for, the Detroit Jazz Festival Vintage Store, where you can buy original Detroit Jazz Festival posters, over 44 years of jazz history, only available from the source, DetroitJazzFest.org. Simply go to the website and click on Buy Vintage Posters. Something we've all been waiting for 44 years. DetroitJazzFest.org.
Hello, Chris Collins here, President and Artistic Director of the Detroit Jazz Festival Foundation. Welcome to this special edition of the Detroit Jazz Festival Foundation's Jazz Chat Live, our monthly program that features panel discussions and artist interviews with some of the leading jazz artists in the world. Tonight's very special guest, a stunningly unique and creative pianist, composer, vocalist, and voice of a new generation, Cameron Graves.
You can join this live conversation by using the Zoom chat feature. Simply click the chat button at the bottom of the Zoom window, type your question, and hit send. For more information on this or any Detroit Jazz Festival Foundation events, simply visit our website at DetroitJazzFest.org. Now, let's get to the cats. Detroit Jazz Fest Foundation's Jazz Chat Live. I think we're going to turn it into On the Road with Cameron Graves.
That's exactly it, man. Because I'm always on the road. I'm always on the road. That's for sure.
Well, you know, West Coast boy, man, you got to be in a car most of the time anyway. So, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. It's just, you know, it's so spread out here.
Yeah.
You know, so you need a car if you're in LA for sure.
Well, as you know, Detroit, the entire metro area was designed around owning an automobile, so we're big on driving too here.
Love it. I know. That's so true. So I mean, Detroit is class. I mean, there's so much history there. I love coming to every time I come to Detroit. I mean, it's just fascinating.
Well, the best part is you can when I go to LA, I love to see 68 Corvettes with no rust on the frame and 57 Chevys that still look like new, man. You know, that's
right. There's a lot of history here too, for sure. Sure, man. We got the lowriders and all that stuff.
It's big time. Hey, I want to welcome all of our viewership. This is something we do every month, and in fact, we have a special one coming up later this month. We have Jazz Chat Live featuring the great Carmen Lundy. So we've got quite a parade of wonderful artists. But tonight, we're very fortunate. One of my favorite musicians anywhere because he's pushing it, and I almost hesitate to call it Jazz Chat Live because to describe your music in a term that is often confusing is maybe not giving it its complete due, right? And this is what I love about Cameron Graves. He's taken it in all new places, coming from a very interesting place. We're going to have a chance to talk with Cameron. And all of you watching out there, this is a live program, and you have an opportunity to chat in your live questions. You go to the Zoom chat feature and click it, and you can send your question in. It comes directly to me, and I get them, as many of those as I can, in during the conversation, which we have until about 8 o'clock. So we look forward to hearing from all of you. In the meantime, Cameron Graves, welcome to Jazz Chat Live, and thanks for taking the time to be here.
Yeah, thank you. This is great. I'm really glad to be here and to definitely talk with you about a lot of things that have been going on and music and everything else. So
cool. Well, you know, I mean, as I alluded to, and I know it's often spoke about your music, the plethora of you know, not just innovations, but all of the ingredients in your music and your openness to a broad spectrum of that, in addition to the idea of jazz, if you will, being a living, breathing music that every generation owns because every generation puts their mark on it and moves it forward. And you've done that in so many ways, and it's something I really want to get into because it speaks to what is real jazz and what is jazz supposed to be now, what is creative music? What does it demand? What does it require? And you have such elegant ways of expressing it. But just for everyone's sake, I think everyone is aware of the West Coast Get Down and that thing. But can we just go? I like to go back just a little further because you have a musical family. You come from a very is it San Fernando Valley? Is that where you came up? If I recall our conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, Van
Tell
Nuys.
us a
Yeah,
little bit about
yeah.
that early stuff, playing piano, getting attracted to music, your parents, the whole thing, man.
Of course, of course. I mean, I come from my father actually was a kind of a well-known singer, songwriter, musician. He's originally from Calgary,
Mm,
born in Calgary,
wow.
grew up in Edmonton, but then grew up, kind of did like went to high school and in Vancouver,
Ah,
and then from there he was actually he started a group called Soul Unlimited. It was like a soul group. It was with Robbie Buchanan, and actually that's where he met David Foster,
yeah.
and that's when he kind of got into Skylark, right? And so and then that's how they put together that group Skylark, and they have that whole big hit, Wildflower and that whole thing.
Sure.
So that's my father's from that whole thing, right? Robbie Buchanan, David Foster, the whole thing. And then, obviously my dad joins Oingo Boingo later on. And I was a little kid, me and my brother, we were about 6 and 8 years old going to see these Oingo Boingo concerts, you know what I mean? So, and being backstage with that. So that's probably where the rock influence comes from. But my father kind of just got me and my brother. I have a brother, Taylor Graves. Same. We kind of partner on so many different projects. The Graves brothers got us started in piano like around 4 or 5 years old.
Wow.
In the Yamaha School of Music, and it was just kind of piano lessons for a while there. Like, as as a dad, you have your sons or your kids in piano lessons, and you kind of just nurture that. We were also in karate lessons too, man. We did the piano lessons, karate lessons thing, man. We did, and it was great. And then my dad just kind of noticed that we had some sort of kind of perfect pitch because we would do the call and response, the solfeggio that they would
Mm,
do,
mm,
and he just kind of noticed, that we had that. So that's what he kind of kept us in there. My father was a big proponent of us kind of sticking with music, just probably because he was a musician.
yeah.
And so we just kind of stuck in there, and then I started doing private lessons like around 7,
Wow.
and that's when I started doing my first kind of small recitals where it was like classical recitals,
Yeah. Yeah.
and being a part of that and really having to develop a piece, practice a piece, really, memorize it, practice it, get it really good, and then perform this piece, right?
Mm,
And a lot of times they were, big pieces: Brahms, Bach, Tchaikovsky, Chopin.
mm,
So I was learning a lot of stuff from about, the age of about 8 to about 14
mm.
is when I transitioned to jazz, because my dad, obviously, he was the one that hit me to Joe Sample,
Yeah.
and from Joe Sample it went to Art Tatum, and that's
Wow.
when so from Joe Sample to Art Tatum, and then by the time I got to ninth grade, that's when I met Kamasi,
Yeah.
and we were in the same jazz band, the C jazz band at Hamilton High School, and Kamasi was the one that really started showing me a lot of Coltrane,
Mm.
Train, and McCoy Tyner, and we would just kind of hang out together every day, all day, like shedding Coltrane and listening to Coltrane. You know what I mean? And it just went from there. And that's where I met everybody, like during those years, the high school years, Hamilton High School, Locke High School, Reggie Andrews, multi-school jazz band, George Bohannon,
Yeah.
Billy Higgins. These are the guys that you know I grew up with. And then as we all moved to UCLA, because we all, like me, Miles Mosley, Kamasi Washington, we all kind of knew we were doing gigs, small gigs, and we kind of moved to UCLA at the same time, because Kenny Burrell had that whole program there.
Big time.
Yeah, so yeah, and so that there you go. I mean, that's kind of the early childhood into high school,
Yeah.
the journey there.
And two solid Detroiters, Kenny Burrell and George Bohannon in the mix
I know,
already.
right? Absolutely. Big idols, big,
Yeah.
mentors.
Both great musicians, and I can remember in the latter part of his life, George came around a couple times. We did a few things. Just one of the
Oh, that's
sweetest
cool.
human beings I ever met in my life, George Bohannon.
I know.
He's
Yeah,
giving back.
it was. Just recently went to his memorial, and he had a big, huge memorial for his passing. It was great. We all we did jam sessions and hung out and lots of great food. It was good.
So something he would have dug.
Celebration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so already something really interesting, and it's because I hear this, musicians hear this in your music, but it's worth noting. I mean, you talk about your early study of piano. I mean, you studied the repertoire, you studied the craft and technique of the instrument, of being a pianist, and it set this for
Absolutely.
sure in your music. It sets a foundation of excellence, of control, of giving you all kinds of choices on a technical craft level towards your artistic goals. But it's a profound and notable piece of what you bring to music from the beginning. I mean, hearing, I slipped into your music from a couple different directions, but as I listened to not only your compositional stuff, but how you, in live performance, some of these introductory elements you do, solo piano, and then your solo work and things, there's this dangerous, pianistic technical ability that's a foundation that I, as a musician, I think every musician does. The more solid all that is, the more choices you have, the more you can bring any artistic idea to life. And your music, the way you compose, demands from everyone that level of excellence. And you allude to this in other interviews and things that you and I have even talked about. This idea of music, creative music at this level should be at this level in all regards. This excellence of command, of craft, of artistry, of technique. And you display that. Talk a little bit about that, because it reaches into to people's expectations in music, what they've kind of gotten used to because of what's been put in front of them, but
Of
what
course.
I think great musicians demand of themselves, and why they love the other greats that they're paying attention to.
Right. Yes, of course. Of course. I mean, I call it, I now call it wizardry, music wizardry.
Mm, mm,
And because I believe that that's really what it is. I mean, if you really think about it, there is no such thing as magic. Magic in the way that we know it on screen, Harry Potter, the whole thing, right? I mean, we know illusionists. There are those guys out there, sleight of hand, things like this. But they're kind of they're playing tricks on your eyes, tricks on your brain.
mm,
The real magic is to be able to have control almost over somebody's perception or their emotions.
mm,
And to be honest with you, that's the true virtuoso musicians.
mm,
The virtuoso musicians are true wizards, because that's what they're doing with their instruments. They're commanding this sort of kind of they're commanding energy. They're commanding energy, and that energy plays into the emotional side of the just the energy inside of all of us, right? And it goes deep into our souls. You know what I mean? So that's the real magic. So I always say music is magic. And I mean, that is it. It does take a level of advancement, like, and I believe that advanced music raises the consciousness of society. The moment you listen to it, the moment you listen to classical music, the moment you listen to jazz, any kind of jazz, whether it's fusion, whether it's 50s bop, whether it's post bop, whatever, you listen to it, you automatically get smarter. You're automatically smarter. It really is. It's fascinating. It's like a phenomenon. It's like the moment you listen to that, and you're not hearing kind of like and no diss against electronic music, you know, zeros and ones producing kind of like the hi-hat, the bass drums. I get into all that anyways. You know, I love hip hop. I make hip hop, I do it. But organic, acoustic, advanced music, right?
Mm.
Is an art. It's like being it's like a samurai. You're like
Yeah.
a samurai. It's like an
Mhm.
art, and that you practice every day. It's a discipline. And not only that, you, in order to be very, very good, first of all, to really become a wizard, a true music wizard, you got to go through a certain time in your life where you're practicing like 10, 12 hours a day.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Where you're obsessed. It's kind of like the same Kobe Bryant Mamba mentality of like, right? It's the same mentality. Like, it's the only thing you do. You're up the earliest, you're in bed the latest, just that's all you can do. There's got to be at least 1 or 2 years of that,
Oh, yeah.
because it really stretches your abilities to get to that next level, that level that most musicians aspire to get to, that Alan Holdsworth level,
Yeah.
right? That
Yeah.
that like, you
Yeah.
know, so
Yeah.
and I try to really push the idea of advanced music, because I want the virtuoso to come back. The fact that the virtuoso is a celebrity rather than a made up celebrity because of marketing, right? So instead of marketing, it is actually because this guy is a true, you know, we should have Kobe Bryant's in the music world.
Right.
We should
Yeah.
have
Right.
LeBron James is in the music world, where their talent, right, equals their value.
That's right.
That's kind of, music is missing that right now. And the reason why music is missing that right now is because there's a larger agenda to try to kind of stump the kind of the consciousness level of society, and advanced music raises the consciousness level of society.
Dig.
It makes people smarter, you know, so
Dig
you know,
and
the powers that be.
yeah, and I mean it's that age-old thing in America for sure is, you know, marketing and slick language and great websites and all this stuff that can present a facade of success artistically or whatever, and all the work that goes into that, and all
Right.
the effort that companies and PR folks and whatnot and bring to new artists. Man, you get your look, man. You're looking right. You gotta get look, and suddenly they jump up
Right.
versus the actual. And you talk
The
about
actual, yes.
yeah, the sports analogy is great because you and I both know NFL, you're not going nowhere if you can't really play, man. You know,
Yes,
you're never
man.
going to
Yes.
achieve it. And music has a great history of celebrating virtuosity, but
Yeah.
we've seen it before. I mean, there's no secret that the bebop musicians in part were a reaction to the jazz label being used on music that clearly was framed and designed and focused on commercial success, i.e., reaching more people easily without as much thought. They don't have to invest as much, right? And your music, you talk about, you know, getting your audience, bringing new audience in, and they're hearing on a higher level, I think is the term you said to me once, hearing on a higher
Yes.
level after they've experienced your music. And you know, something that aligns with this, and there's a couple reasons I'm thinking of this. Last year we did a tribute to Alice Coltrane with Ravi, and Michelle was
Oh,
here, and we had
yes.
Brandy on harp and orchestra. The Lion Healy
cool.
harps had just finished redoing Alice's original harp, and it was a beautiful moment. But I got to know Michelle a bit more, and Ravi a bit more for that. But I remember hearing you on Michelle's record, Awakening,
Of
some
course.
years ago. And I
Yeah.
bring all that up because something Ravi said when we were having just a quiet conversation. I visited the Coltrane home in Long Island, which is under construction, right? And
Right. Yeah.
the room where John, you know, pretty much composed Love Supreme.
Yeah.
I could barely step in. I mean, there's the window. He looked out the back. This is the floor he
The-
stood, you know, that kind of
yes.
a vibe.
Yeah.
But knowing the incredible hard work and discipline that goes into that. And Ravi, we were talking about this issue it was so great to hear him express it this way, which was, you know, often people assign almost a level of deity to his father, John Coltrane.
Yes, of
And
course.
his point was much like your description of magic or being a wizard, if you will. The real story, the real beauty is no, man, it was a human being working tirelessly, investing in their mind, their spiritualism, their
Oh
connectivity, as
yeah.
well as their craft, and they create this thing that is easily assignable to the gods, but in fact, it it is done by a human being, and that's
Yeah.
the powerful, beautiful message. Is you can achieve that, but it takes focus, effort, and real thoughtfulness about who you are and your convictions and challenging those. And you do that every track I've ever heard you come out with, and every time I've heard you live, I feel like you are not only building on a strong foundation of technique, craft, and artistry, but you've had spent a lot of time continually looking inward, thinking about everything from Train to Dilla to Jocko to heavy metal. But it's a constant thought process, and you have the skills and technique and wherewithal then to pull it off in performance, and it speaks to the greatness that human beings can accomplish
Yes.
with the right foundation. It's beautiful, man.
Yes, yes, yes. I totally agree. But I totally agree. Yes, foundation is definitely everything, you know.
It
Yeah,
really is. And
definitely
then to
everything.
transmit that, the guys we know attached to you, to know that you came up together, that speaks volumes about how much information and philosophy you shared amongst yourself to come up with a united vision of excellence and virtuosity. The other part of that again, I've heard you speak to this before, but if you can elaborate a bit, because it's a tough subject. If we
Yeah,
use the term jazz, and
of
certainly
course.
in a city like Detroit, a great history, a definable sound in some aspects, and certainly composers and a long list of greats that went on to shape the language itself.
Of
There's no
course.
doubt about it. But I've always felt with the guys I grew up with and the some of the greats that I had the chance to meet in my generation, um, the real thing was to take all that and revel in the fact you're part of a certain legacy, but then to build it into your own thing, to have the courage to release yourself from just maintaining a historical perspective, and learning language and vocabulary and
Right.
compositions, and take that leap and that introspection to say,
Yes.
okay, to develop your own. And this is something I've heard you talk about in a very particular way. It really kind of is the definition of jazz, even though that word has gotten miscategorized. Speak to that
Right.
a little bit because it has a lot to do with new audiences and letting everyone know every generation should own this music.
Yes, of course. I mean, you know, it's funny because me and Kamasi both kind of went through this, since high school, where we were kind of judged pretty harshly for it too. Not being able to speak the language is what it was called. Like we're not we need to go back and study the language more. We need to go back and study the language more. We heard that so many times from a lot
Mm,
of different judges and teachers
mm,
and band teachers, which is fine because you do need to do that at a certain point, especially when you're coming up and you're studying jazz. It's very important to learn language. Now, but the way I like to teach that, though, especially to a lot of students that I teach, is I don't actually like to teach transcription. Like, I don't want you to really write out the notes. I just want you to spend at least I make some of my students spend like at least a month long with one record, just one record. Just pick an influence or pick a record, pick an influence, and I just want you to spend 1 month with that influence, right? Don't no transcribing, just spend like a month just constantly digesting and stuff. Because I tell them all the time, it's not really about the notes, it's about the character. Like what you want to do is you want to download the character into
mm,
your subconscious, right?
mm,
You want to, and so especially when you're coming up as a young musician, you want to be able to download as many characters into your subconscious as possible, right? You want to have all the different library in there. Okay. But the one thing I used to struggle with transcribing back when when we were learning. You know, and there were a lot of the band teachers were kind of strict about that. Although it does help to learn how to write music for sure, but a lot of students get locked into the box of the actual, you know, what they're writing, what they're transcribing.
Mm.
And they you know, you study that lick over and over and over again like it's classical music, which is great, but then you're locked in. So what happens is we don't get to hear who you are. We don't get to hear your sound. We don't get to hear your expression, your language. You know what I mean? You know, I'm sure that you've had to deal with some bullying at high school. I'm sure that you've probably got dumped by your first girlfriend. I'm sure that you know, failed miserably on 3 different exams and like totally thought the world was going to end. You know, these experiences are expressed through you when you go to improvise, when you go to solo, like the exact notes that you play. And all that really listening to records does is you're downloading characters so that you can understand the language.
Mm-hmm.
You can understand the language, right? And then from there, you can just it just naturally comes out when you start to play. It just naturally comes out when you start to play. It's a lot of listening. You know, you can't just think, oh, let me listen to a record a couple of times. Like you got to really spend, you know, a good month and a half, you know, sometimes just every day with the same artist, same record sometimes. But that's how it's done. You're literally downloading the characters into your subconscious, and they come out during those long 8, 9, 10-hour practices. This is another thing I learned from Indian musicians, from when I was studying a lot of Indian music at UCLA. A lot of my practice techniques and a lot of my practice philosophies actually come from Indian music and Indian musicians. They're the ones that do the crazy things called chillas, which is like a thing you do for like 30 or 40 days, and you do like, it's like 12 or 14-hour practices. You don't even take your hands off your instrument, right? You don't even go to the bathroom. Like it's pretty extreme, but it's like a meditational kind of thing. And so what happens is as you're playing, you get into this trance, and the trance just kind of brings out things from your subconscious, right? Or even things in your generational memory, right? I say generational memory because like stuff you may not remember, but might be past life kind of stuff coming through, right? As you're playing your instrument. So that's some stuff, you know, the Indian musicians get into, man. They get real deep with it. Yeah. So.
Well, you know, I mean, I think part of it, we're all a product of our journey. I mean, artistically, that is what I think the definition of artistry. It's the product of your journey. And if your journey is limited in any respect, it can very well limit what your creative output may or may not be. And I think there's something really neat about coming to that point where you can hear Sonny Rollins blowing 5 choruses on I'll Take Manhattan, and you totally get it. You understand it. You can play along with them. You know, you understand the harmonic those light bulbs go on. There's something beautiful about that can be learned through it. But also, there's a point where doing those kind of things, while they're necessary, technical things are necessary through your whole life. Theory, trying to embolden that, but like you say, you can get stuck in a rut where it gets sort of easy to do certain things. Like you can do 5,000 transcriptions, you can know them all,
right?
But that's not necessarily, that's just one dimension. And I think the other thing you're talking about, the spiritual, the introspective, challenging your convictions, whether because a critic tells you your stuff ain't happening, or whether it's because your bandmates go this way or that. You have to challenge your convictions to make sure that, hey man, it's real. I'm not BSing myself, and all that taken together. I've always found in talking to students and quite frankly in my own upbringing, the courage comes when you set that stuff aside and start to look internally via meditation, via maybe your 10-hour practice sessions become somewhat of that, but opening yourself up
Right.
to who you are, what you bring, the stories you bring. Frankly, sometimes that says you haven't lived much, and that's why you don't have a lot of stories to tell. So maybe you need to go out there and live a little bit and experience and travel and get in other cultures, as you're mentioning. But this point
So
is,
true.
it takes a lot of courage. It's not something that some
Yes.
teacher's going to say, okay, on the fourth week, we're going to move into introspection and self-exploration. It just, that isn't
Yeah.
part of the academic side.
Yeah. I mean, you're really excited when you're young, between 15 and 25. You're super excited to get out there, especially if you're already kind of like a monster. You're a young prodigy, and you've done all your practicing, you've outshined all your classmates and stuff. There's always those kind of musicians, man. They that the tendency is to play, to get out there and show everything you got, all the stuff that you've learned, all the licks that you've learned, but that is that you soon discover as you get a little older, once you get to about 30, 35, you soon discover that, like, it's about listening, and it's about discovering, and it's about just kind of like, contributing to the
Mm,
to the art that's being created. It's more of a contribution rather than a
mm,
takeover.
mm.
It's more of a it's more of a
Yeah,
contribution rather than a takeover. When you're young, you're on the takeover, man. You're like
that's right. That's right.
you're trying to take over.
And
It's
that's,
so
there's
cool.
probably value to every step of that. In fact, there is value to every step,
Of
but
course.
it the world, and certainly the world of marketing and so on, can often keep artists from finding
Yeah.
the time, resources, whatnot, to let some of these things go and move into a much more personal space, as you say, adding to the anthem of jazz, of creative music, of whatever. And then of course, that there's no guarantee that's going to have impact beyond certain borders. You have taken it, and that whole movement has certainly put some new things on the table. And I want to get to that next, as well as a few questions
Yeah, of
here,
course.
because your spiritual
Of
side
course.
and the way you bring a fullness into what you do and how you do it is a big part of what people are asking about. But in the meantime, just want to just take a few minutes away from the conversation, and a little message from some of my friends at the Detroit Jazz Festival Foundation. And here it is. With a brand new litter of jazz cats, the next generation of jazz stars are ready to light up the scene. We're proud to highlight the Detroit Jazz Festival Foundation's latest initiative, Next Generation Detroit Jazz. The program is all about lifting up young lions and giving them the spotlight they so richly deserve. To help these talented musicians continue the tradition of jazz in Detroit, we need your support. As we ramp up the programming for the 2025 Detroit Jazz Festival, we invite you to consider supporting the next generation of Detroit jazz artists. Every dollar you donate will go directly to this exciting initiative. So visit DetroitJazzFest.org. That's DetroitJazzFest.org/donate, and indicate Next Gen, NEXTGEN, in the comments section. Please make your tax-deductible donation today. And this is a very special program that's focused on the aspiring artists. We have them as part of our Friday programming every week, Jazz from the Cellar and Jazz After Hours. And we're also taking a wonderful collaborative group to Japan this year that comes from this next gen, these cats that are in their professional part of their career, creating new sounds, new textures, and working together in new ways. You'll be hearing more about that in the near future. So in the meantime, think about supporting that very special initiative. Go to DetroitJazzFest.org/donate. And we appreciate anything you can do, as do the young aspiring artists in our community. All right, so back to continuing our conversation. There's a couple of questions here, and I think I'm going to try to pull them together a bit. Uh,
Yeah,
we're when we talk about, I mean, I'll go back to, the West Coast Get Down. That's probably the entry point for a lot of people into quite a few of the artists that you work with, and a movement that really became important for some of the reasons we're talking about as artists, but even amongst patrons, the sound, the textures, the level of execution, but still the connectivity, the human connectivity, the organic fluidity and
of course.
connectivity that they felt. Um, and so the questions are between the how the shape of that, which I think we've answered a little bit, but then how do you see it even in the recent years and moving forward? That movement, have you experienced its imprint as you travel around? Do you feel the fruits of that movement in other places? And how do you see it? How do you see it evolving and having effect on the future of creative music, if any of those thoughts are come to mind?
My connection is breaking up.
Okay, that's all right.
Sorry about that. My
That's a
connection was breaking up too.
can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Sorry about that. Yeah, if you
So
repeat the question, I missed the question.
I will streamline it. So the question is a combination of the whole grouping of artists we've already talked about in your early life, and the West Coast Get Down. And have you felt the imprint of the fruits of that music elsewhere as it's become incredibly popular, and now you have young artists, old artists following what you're doing? Have you felt it, and how do you see that evolving and maybe having additional impact on creative music around the world?
I have definitely felt it. I have definitely felt it, especially because I play a lot, as you know, with Stanley Clark. So I'm also, I've spent a lot of time with him, almost 10 years now, and so I get a chance to kind of see his audience too as well, and feel his audience, talk to them as well. Just when they thank me during after the shows, in the green room and things like this, and and they just love Kamasi. They love the whole West Coast Get Down movement. They love Kamasi. And then at the same time, they also definitely know a lot about Thundercat, Steven Bruner, and that
Right.
whole the Thundercat sound. So it's always really cool to see uh, you know jazz lovers and music lovers, um, in the different demographics and what they think, and how that what we brought, this kind of sound, this new sound, has bridged the gap, I think, with the younger demographic and the older demographic, right? Because now it's kind of like this really cool sound, um, and this really cool power, but with the advanced kind of the music, the jazz sound to it, that a lot of the older listeners, they're the ones that kind of get that. They understand that. They come from that. They can hear that, right? And then what it does is it kind of opens the doors for the younger listeners, because then they go, "Ooh, what is this?" Right? It's almost like a discovery. So it's kind of this it's this cycle that kind of happens. It's really cool. But that's what I think that the sound has done. It's really kind of just bridged that gap between the older demographic and the younger demographic, the listeners, right? Bringing this kind of bringing together this advanced kind of relationship, advanced music relationship. It's super cool.
It is super cool, and it's so important to, creative music in general, that new generations feel themselves, see themselves, hear themselves, and their culture within modern music, whether it be jazz, contemporary orchestral composition, musicals on Broadway. I mean, there's something to be said for an art continuing to be alive and breathe and grow. The only way it is if
Or
everyone feels attachment. One of the another question here. And by the way, if anyone watching today wants to ask a question, use the Jazz Chat feature on your Zoom and chat your question in. They come directly to me. I'm going to get in as many as I can in our last 15 minutes or so with the great Cameron Graves. Um, uh, in regards to the balance, always a jazz conversation, especially speaking to jazz journalists often. This idea of uh, there are older jazz patrons that if as soon as they hear anything that hints at electric fusion, they'll push it aside, it's categorized. And there are young people that as soon as they hear something that sounds like traditional jazz, oh, that's something my grandfather lives. Those are all always bad decisions, but we understand them, right? But there are some things you do to balance something a little more cerebral, which is the question of, is especially improvising musician, are the works, is the improvisation in the band, is it more technical or is it emotional? Often suggesting it can't be both, which goes back to the virtuoso thing. You can't listen to Art Tatum without hearing a mind-blowing technical prowess over the keyboard and mental
right.
theory, but it's about as warm and engaging as it can get. So that balance between the emotional, opening yourself up to the moment and the musicality without paying, without leaving the importance of virtuosity and technical prowess out of the equation.
That is exactly who Frederick Chopin is. That's exactly Frederick Chopin. That's exactly it. And that's why and that's also who exactly Stevie Wonder is. Stevie Wonder is
Yeah.
the same kind of thing, where beautiful, beautiful song, but you don't realize how technically advanced you have to be in order to like sing a lot of Stevie Wonder songs or play a lot of Chopin's tunes, right? You have to, and Chopin is funny because is built around the extreme technique that he's using, right? But it's not technique just to show, oh, I'm playing some kind of trill or scale or arpeggio here. It's just like some random, just finger movement just to show that my fingers can move fast. It's really like it's a beautiful song, right? You don't even hear the technique. And
Mm.
so that is definitely something that I aspire, I still practice and aspire to get to that level of where your music, because that's the true wizardry, is to be able to, I want to speak to your emotions, I want to speak to your subconscious, right? And it's funny, like simple music does do that, but simple music that it's really advanced music that is written simply. That's
Mm.
that's advanced music that's written simply is the music. That simple music is more kind of what you hear today in a lot of like, mainstream pop music and stuff like that. And that's kind of, to be honest with you, like, see, music is funny. Music can heal, but music can also hurt, to tell you the truth. Music can heal, but music can hurt too, because you can do things with frequencies, you can do things with kind of with chord changes, and just you know you, especially the auto tune stuff, exactly that, to where your ear almost, you can train the brain to hear the perfect note, and then the brain doesn't respond well to the organic note anymore because of the perfect note. It's almost like it's a funny thing, right? And so, my whole thing is, I think that as AI starts coming on, and AI eventually will probably be able to write a lot of music for us, where it's just like text, where you can prompt it and it'll be able to write the piece, things like this. Um, I've always said this. I think that the organic human performer will be so valuable, right? because of how much, how much it's almost like paper versus plastic. It's almost like a great hamburger versus McDonald's. You know what I mean? It's that kind of a thing. It's like there's so much McDonald's around. When you get that great burger, you're willing to pay like $20, $25 for that great burger because it's hard to find that, right?
Dig.
So,
Dig.
so that's my thing for young musicians. That's why we need to continue to keep advanced music going, because eventually music will be mostly AI, and the human performer will be the most valuable thing. It'll be a gem.
And at those moments in any industry, as far as AI or any kind of synthetic element, it it comes back to the creators, the artists, the designers, the architects, uh, ability to coalesce the technical, the historical language with the human and with their own personal, because that can't be AI'd. We certainly could write a melody and have AI arrange it like a Thad Jones big band shout because there's a formula that could be used, and yes, there you go.
Right.
But but that human, how you balance not only just the human,
Yep. Yeah.
but also your unique, one of a kind perspective, which should be changing every moment of every day. And if you're aware of that as an artist, that is irreplaceable. It simply is. And I
Yeah.
think that,
Absolutely.
and,
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's
and
exactly it.
and you really sound like that is, I know you do a lot of mentoring. You did some great stuff with some aspiring young musicians here in Detroit just a few years ago, and led them in an ensemble and had them playing.
Of
And
course.
I loved watching the whole thing. They were digging it. They were smiling. You were digging it. You were all in it with them. You were part of that. It was a real, true expression of passing on and mentoring. I really get a sense
Yeah.
you
Of course.
this is a key of to how you mentor others in this music.
Oh, you there?
We
Sorry.
got, we got a
Broke up
little
again.
we got a little lag. That's all right. Just speak. We only have a few minutes left, but
Okay.
but speak uh, to the degree you want. I mean, there's something I've admired in probably most of the musicians I've really loved in my life. There's beyond just being introspective, you have a pretty holistic view of your place and your relationship with music and music's relationship with the whole, and the spiritual side of that you bring. And there's already plenty of stuff out there that talks about the Urantia book and your relationship and some of the things that you
Hmm.
may share there. But it's this holistic, the spiritual, the virtuosic, the human, the everlasting existence, however you want to put it. But that's all part of who you are as an artist. It's a very special, holistic, looking at every perspective of existence and non-existence, if you will. Do you have anything to share that gives us a little more insight into that side of you?
Absolutely. I mean, I go very, very deep. I was into spiritual philosophy when I was like about 12 years old. I got in like doing all the psychic abilities. I wanted to learn all the psychic abilities. But then, I'm just very read in that subject. I've done a lot of study on theology, and and uh, it's funny, around 20 or 21, when I got into Wicked Wisdom in Jada Pinkett's band.
Yeah.
That's when I kind of started doing all the heavy metal stuff. It was great. And I was actually doing it before, but then I influenced her to do it because I was like, this is where we got to go. Especially back in 2001, 02, 03, 04, 05, 06. It was really big. So I was like, yo, we got to. But I met a guitar player. It was a guitar player and a drummer. A guitar player named Pocket Honore, and a drummer named Philip Fisher, or Fish from Fishbone. Actually, he was part of that group. They were martial artists. They were big martial artists, right? They were crazy too, man, and they knew this martial art that was insane. I mean, it was one of those kind of secret Chinese kind of martial arts, and I wanted to know what it was, and so they told me that it was kind of like this. It was part of the Taoist martial arts. Okay, so it was like the Xingyi and Bagua and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so I really, coming from a martial art background, I really wanted to learn it. I mean, I was like, okay, this is crazy. I want to learn. And it had everything to do with like Qi Kong and all this stuff. And so that's when the guitar player Pocket, he started showing me. And I've been doing that ever since, almost like 20 years. And a big part of that is the Taoist kind of philosophy, right? Or the Taoist kind of the yin yang philosophy. And then so from there, I kind of step away from because I'm never really a person to kind of just like believe in something. I'm always on the search for like more knowledge or whatever, But yin yang is a great starting point for anybody really trying to break away from the Abrahamic religions and go into a much more broad spectrum of what the possibilities, the possibility of the higher power and the higher energy, or God, right? And then from there, I just, I've done a lot of Paramahansa Yogananda, and read a lot of different books. I mean, really, it really has everything to do with your excitement. Excitement is kind of like a kit, a whole kit in itself. Your excitement brings forth this kind of like this energy. You can feel it in your lower belly, in your dantian, and it's like this energy when you really get excited about something. And then from there, that excitement is going to trigger like a vision or a visual in your head of what you think you want to happen, what you want, right? The excitement, and then what you want, right? And then from there, the what you really want to do is you want to kind of let that go, what you want, and then from there you have to learn how to take that excitement and put it into action. Basically, you got to create a plan. What I like to do is I like to reverse engineer what I want to do, and then from there, after you get all the different steps, then you go step 1, step 2, step 3. That's how you make a dream come true. That's how because you got to actually take actionable steps to make a dream come true. And then from that, you'll start to realize that you are the creator. Like, you just created this thing. You did the work of reverse engineering. You went step by step and you created this thing. And you go, man, I created this from the energy that I felt to the vision to the manifestation. It's the most practical explanation of all that ethereal type of stuff that you always hear, to manifest your dreams. That is the practical way of doing it. It's a lot of hard work too, because the work comes in when you got to focus, meaning like you can only work on the one thing. You got to turn other stuff down. You have to say no to other stuff so you can work on the one thing. That's a lot, that has a lot to do with focus. You know what I mean? And then you have to be able to like do the critical task every single day until the critical task is done, right? So you got to work on that until it's done, right? So you don't want busy work. You want to work on the critical task every single day until whatever you're trying to manifest is manifested. So this is where I'm coming from, right? This is where I'm coming from. And so, absolutely. And I just created one of the most comprehensive virtual piano academies I think that has ever been created. It's called Virtuosaria, School of Piano Wizardry. So you can visit it at virtuosaria.com. It's School of Piano Wizardry, and it's basically, you can come as a novice, you can come as a sorcerer, which is the intermediate, and you can come as a wizard, which is advanced. So I've laid it out. I have 5 different campuses, right? So you have the songwriting campus, the music theory campus, the piano basics campus, and I have at least 20 different tutorial videos per campus laying this stuff out. You know what I mean? And it's basically,
cool.
For the price of a dinner every single month. It's about, $50 a month, $60 a month.
Wow, beautiful, man. Wow. I'm gonna sign up for the Dumbledore level when I when I get out of here. And, and I wanna we I knew there was a delay. There's a couple more questions. Real quick, we just have a minute
That's where I'm
left.
going, man. That's where I'm going.
What you
Eventually, that's the goal. That's the
well,
goal, to have almost like a.
it's a
Okay.
beautiful. It's a beautiful connection to what people can relate to, and I love the suggestion of mysticism, particularly because we just discussed that it's not mysticism, it's just human hard work and ingenuity, but there's something
Right.
fun about it that way. So you mentioned that. Spell the website for us so we know.
So it's basically like virtuoso, but virtuosaria, right? .com.
Got it. We'll make sure we put that up and share it with everyone. And then lastly, anything else coming up that you're excited about? Projects, directions, concerts?
Oh yeah, well I've definitely got a huge European tour coming up with Kamasi. That'll be in March, and I'll be all over Europe again. So I'll be in Germany, England, France. So be sure to look for us. That'll be between March 13th and April 1st. So
Super
I look
cool.
forward to seeing all of you guys out there when in your town for sure.
And certainly, I promised to get you back to Detroit. We'll talk about that soon. I always love what you do here, and with some of the new things we can year round, we have great opportunities. So we'll look forward to
I
that.
love it.
Cameron, I
I love
can't
it.
thank you enough, and I'm glad you pulled over. You didn't do the whole thing driving because that would have looked bad.
No, I had to. I wanted to be engaged, man. I wanted to be engaged.
Well, listen, man, have a beautiful, beautiful weekend. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for all of you who watched today, Detroit
Thank you,
Jazz
Chris.
Fest, Jazz Chat Live. We have another one coming up with Carmen Lundy and just a week, and then in March we'll be here talking to Kyle Eastwood as part of Jazz Chat Live, and then every Friday 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Jazz from the Cellar and Jazz After Hours, featuring some of the great musicians from around the country. So in the meantime, thank you, Cameron. Stay beautiful. I can't wait to talk
Thank
to you
you.
soon about music and to
Yeah.